Good evening and welcome to INQ&A. The Inquirer question and answer program comes to you every Tuesday. Every week, we sit down with a leading newsmaker to discuss the issues of the day. Pasensya na po, medyo nahuli kami na traffic. But we will make up for it because we have truly a very important guest tonight. Marami tayong tanong, marami na rin tayong natanggap na tanong galing sa mga kaibigan natin sa social media. INQ&A is broadcast live on Radyo Inquirer 990. It is also carried live on Facebook as well as on inquirer.net, as well as on Inquirer Television on digital TV. We are also carried on the various Inquirer social media platforms. My name is John Neri. I'm editor-in-chief of Inquirer.net, and with me is my co-host, Christine Sabilio, Chief of Reporters of Inquirer.net.
Thank you for tuning in tonight. Looks like we're on time, a bit late, but we're gonna start with our guest right here. Before we start with the questions, we're just gonna introduce her to you with 3 interesting things that you might not know about her. Number 1, she's a fan of OPM and the likes of Rico J and Up Dharma Down. It's a bit of a different genre and different era of music, I guess. It's very interesting. The second is that she's the first female chair of the Senate Committee on Public Order. And the third is that she is the first and only Filipino politician to win 20 million votes in an election. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Grace Poe.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Neri, and to you, Christine.
Dyan lang po. Thank you, Senator, for making time for this.
Of course, it's a wonderful opportunity also to be able to speak to your many listeners. Sa lahat po na nakikinig, magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you. You were in the news again today. You suspended the hearings of the Committee on Public Order on the emergency powers issue. What happened?
Well, like many of our riding public and also our commuters, I'm also very frustrated. We're all affected by traffic. Nobody's immune to it. On the other hand, I think that a Senate hearing should be an opportunity also for them to be able to give out solutions, and it should not be a platform for just rhetoric. So I was saying, ano naman ang pagdidiskusyon na natin? Hinihingi na nga namin sa inyo, what do you need? Because we will give it to you as long as you can really guarantee that you will work on the problem. The last hearing that we had, Yusek Quintanar said that they needed 2 weeks for them to be able to submit their what they need from the emergency powers, what their proposed projects will be. Now, I thought that was a little long because considering they should be breathing and living this every day, what the problems are. But then, of course, we have to be able to give them the chance to put together their plans. So I said, if we call them back, that will take time away from them actually working. Second, what will we discuss? I think what they need to know is the different sectoral concerns. So we're having some technical meetings, but I heard now that Secretary Tugade said that, no, 2 weeks is too long. Baka next week o bukas, ibibigay ko na. Ay, pwede pala yun.
Okay.
So bakit naging, pero pwede naman palang madaliin, di ba? So mabuti na rin na sinuspend ko muna para medyo magising rin sila.
So I was thinking about that. The suspension was really to pressure them to come up with the plans, the concrete
It's
plans.
not really to pressure them. It's also to remind them that the Senate is not just a place where you can have free publicity for anything. I mean, there should really be some substance to what you talk about. You know, a lot of senators are also being scrutinized for their questions, if there's really relevance or whatever. But you can't really have a relevant hearing unless the main substance of it, which is why we need emergency powers, is laid out. So sabi ko naman, we're going to give them enough elbow room. We don't need to have all of the specifics. But at least tell us what your big ticket items are. Will you be building more bridges? Will you have more roads? Where will they be? What type of intermodal system will you have?
Do you think they have enough time? I mean, barely 60 days in office. Do you think they have enough time to
That's
put
what,
together a plan?
exactly, sir. That's why we've been also very considerate, considering they've only been there for a few days. Well, no, maybe a little more than a month. But there should be a something. Now they came up with plans that they said would also be reflective of the last administration, what they weren't able to implement. But the difference is apparently now they have political will to implement it. So if they're just going to be continuing those plans, and I don't see any reason why there should be a delay in the submission.
Just to be able to share with the audience who are listening, right, who might not be following the hearings, how should the emergency powers be visualized? What would it look like? What kind of powers would the Senate or the legislature be able to give to the president?
Well, see, one of the things is I told them, please submit to us a draft bill of what you want in your emergency powers. Is galing na sa kanila. Now, what would it benefit to have emergency powers? Number one, there are right-of-way acquisitions. There are others that might give the government a hard time. Apparently now, in the north extension of the north and south extension, the problems are actually public utilities that are owned by the NGCP. So with the emergency powers, maybe the president can fast-track acquisition or the relocation of those power grids. Another thing, they said they want to open up certain subdivisions. Of course, with the emergency powers, it will be easy. You don't have to go through so many hearings. But more importantly is also the procurement process. That you don't have to go through the very
bureaucratic,
detailed requirements of COA for as long as it's, for me, FOI compliant. I mean, we can take part in scrutinizing these contracts beforehand. You don't really need to go through the very stringent and reasonable process. What they want is like direct source procurement. Like if they have somebody who they know has a track record for building roads, they may not be the cheapest, but they're the most efficient, and they're the most credible. Then why not? I'm not for the cheapest as long as they can deliver the best quality. So these are the things that the emergency powers can perhaps address. But again, I said I'm not into. This will fall back on me. If we approve this in the Senate, a blanket emergency powers without the duration, without the parameters, without the oversight, tayo rin ang kakagatin nito. Kasi sabi ko nga, ayaw naman natin na 20 years down the line, our children are still paying for the debts to come up with these projects.
So may nabubuo na bang consensus sa Senado about some of these emergency powers?
That the Senate is, a lot of them are very supportive of the President's program. I don't see any reason why this should not pass in the Senate in the soonest possible time, reasonably fastest time. But again, it will fall on me as the chairman of the committee to make sure that we have the safeguards in place. Sa ating mga kababayan, di ba, sabi nga natin, kung padalos-dalos din ng kilos para lamang masolusyonan ang agarang problema, maaaring lumika ito ng mas malalim pang mga problema para sa atin. So pinag-iingatan ko, pero sabi ko nga, the bottleneck is not in the Senate because we've been hearing already on this issue. Whereas Congress, I don't know which committees it's been referred to. Because
Ganun ba?
yes, sir, because as you know, in the Senate, Public Services and Franchises is one committee. But I was just talking to a congressman earlier, and he was saying, he's not familiar to where it's been referred to. Will it be public order? Will it be local government? So they still have to start their hearings. And you can't pass a law with just the Senate.
That's right.
It has to be both houses. And then another thing is, the DOT hasn't submitted a list to us. So what are we working on? A blank sheet of paper? Are we supposed to be the experts also in the Senate to actually give them our suggestions on the solutions to traffic? No. We need to be able to listen to our resource persons, but more importantly, we need to be able to listen to those at the helm of this, which is the DOTR.
But the premise that the government now has that traffic is a crisis.
Yes.
Do you share that?
Absolutely. JICA says 2 billion pesos a day in losses. I won't be surprised if Mr. Togada is right at saying it's 3 billion. But it's not that. It's the quality of time you spend with your family. I'm a mom. It takes me about an hour and a half to 2 hours to go home from work every day. Because I live in Quezon City and I'm coming from Pasay. But, I don't even have a right to complain as much as our other riding public that take public utilities to go home. So talagang this is really a crisis. But even in a crisis, even when we go to war, we should have a plan. We should have a battle plan. We can't just give blanket authorization because eventually this will all fall on our shoulders.
So, best case scenario, for instance, the DOTC comes up with the plans and so on. When's the earliest, and your counterpart committees in the Congress will also do their work. When's the earliest that an emergency powers law bill can become law?
My wish is that hopefully we can have this before we go in our October break. I mean, in our
okay.
Yeah, at least for the Senate. I can't speak
At least for the Senate.
I can't speak for Congress. I mean, also interparliamentary courtesy. At the latest, perhaps before Christmas. But, there are certain suggestions that maybe they can implement even without the emergency powers. Like they were saying, somebody, this might be a little bit drastic, but they were saying, can schools actually end classes by December 12? So that, the Christmas rush wouldn't be too much on all of us. I mean, why not, right? And then start in January. And by that time, we're all done already with our Christmas holiday obligations. So these are things that the DOT can perhaps roll out as early as of now to address the problem in the coming holidays. But in our case, I really want to finish this because, as you see, even if we pass this already in the Senate, our job remains because I will make sure that we have an oversight committee. And this oversight committee, the same way as in 1993 when President Ramos had his emergency powers, there was an oversight committee, but it didn't work as well because the contract that was signed was published 2 weeks after it was already signed. Whereas in our case, every single thing that the government will try to get into, I want it posted on a website. And okay, oversight is composed of the Senate and Congress, but I will invite as advisors openly those from the private sector that have the expertise, engineers, ex-chief justices that have the credibility, people that will know about traffic, para when we have the scrutinizing of the contracts, hindi mo sasabihin, ano bang alam ng mga mambabatas na yan sa kapal ng karsada o sa gagamitin ng mga steel bars para dyan.
Emergency powers will last for 2 years. Do you think that is enough to, especially with the infrastructure that they need to construct?
As long as you already procure what you need, you don't really have to be there all the until the end of the project. But of course, 17th Congress about 3 years, and it can last the duration of the entire 17th Congress. We have several bills. Some of them proposed 2 years. I think Senator Zubiri, and then Senator Drilon. I think one of them proposed 3 years. I'm not sure, but anyway. We'll see how long it's needed there. I'm not worried about the emergency powers being granted. I think we will put enough safeguards there. What I'm worried is they'll actually not be able to use and maximize and optimize having the emergency powers to be able to solve the problem.
Ano pong component sa air traffic congestion? Meron bang?
Yun pa nga eh. Ano bang parameters ng emergency powers na gusto ninyo? Metro Manila lang ba? Metro Cebu, Davao and Cagayan de Oro? Air ba? Maritime? Wala naman masyado sa maritime. But yung air traffic, I think that's part of it. Again, we're waiting for the DOTR to say, ano bang wish list nyo? Pwede naman kami maging Santa Claus dito para ibigay sa inyong kailangan ninyo bago magpasko.
Senator, just a rundown. I remember nga you said during the hearing that there are a lot of issues that can be resolved without emergency powers. What are those? And I remember there was this time you even went to a bus terminal.
Right.
And how was that experience for you? And what do you think should be done now by the agencies concerned? You know,
some people are saying, pupunta-punta yan sa mga ganyan, nagpapakitang gilas lang yan ng epal. Hindi. our documentation of it, we didn't have media there. It was just really for us to show in our hearings. Because ang pinaka-ayoko ay sabihin sa akin, nagsasalita ka tungkol dyan, nasubukan mo na ba? Okay, so pumunta ako dun sa terminal na yon, and you know what, you're right, and thank you for asking that question. These things, you don't need emergency powers to be able to haul away the trash, to clean the bathroom, to install air conditioning in the waiting area, to instruct the bus operators to leave as soon as their seats are all taken, and not to wait for the passengers to have for it to be standing room, to install lights. These are all the things that can be done without emergency powers, to fix the walkway. So, but definitely you need emergency powers so that, number one, when they actually build the permanent bus terminal, it will be an intermodal station, meaning hindi lang mga bus ang darating doon, pati jeep, taxi, anong bang tawag dito, train. Kasi po, yung sinasabi nila, may mga ibang nagrereklamo, paano na yung mga galing sa south, sa Laguna, at sa mga yung mga magsasaka natin, dala-dala yung mga bayong nila. When they get to the southwest terminal, they can't take the metro buses. They're not allowed to bring their kaengs inside the bus. So definitely, you need jeepneys there, whatever forms it will take it. So for us consumers, we are affected by this because the prices of goods will actually increase because of the transportation problem. They actually have to hire private taxis to be able to bring their goods to the market. So I think that we should have an efficient intermodal system, and it in the long run will be cheaper. And then you can't say, oy mga buses, mag-relocate na kayo. Eh nasa ng terminal nyo? Wala pa nga kayong terminal sa north. Nabili na ba ninyo yung lupa? Hindi pa rin. Yung dito sa Taguig, yung FTI station will I think begin construction in September. This is a bid won by Ayala, and you know we trust in their track record. It will probably be a nice terminal. But again, shouldn't you be meeting with bus operators to know exactly how many buses they have to be parked in these terminals? The other one, I think, in the north was awarded to Mega World. You know, they have the track record. They build all the SM malls and many others. But when I asked the bus operators, they've not met with Mega World to ask for the specifics and what they might need in the structure. So definitely, there's a disconnect between government and the stakeholders. And this is what we're trying to bridge in the Senate. Hopefully,
So you've invited all the stakeholders?
we did, and you know, it was kind of like fiery because they each had their gripes.
Yeah.
But they really need to be listened to. The jeepney operators were complaining because they didn't have enough signages, and then the government doesn't really provide them the right drop-off points. So talagang magulo talaga po.
Senator, let's shift to another topic. FOI naman, no? But you mentioned that there's a need to be transparent about contracts for the emergency powers and so on. We have from Facebook, Russ Reslo. Ano po ang criteria para sa magaling na FOI bill? Dapat po ba may limitasyon ng transparency?
Ay, Reslo, salamat sa tanong mo. Ang FOI ay para lahat tayo may kapangyarihan busisiin kung ano nangyari sa gobyerno. Ngayon, may limitasyon bang FOI? Meron po. Kahit po dun sa version na nilagdaan natin sa Senado, pagdating po sa mga criminal investigations na ongoing, kunyari may tinutuntun na may mga suspects, di ba? Hindi naman pwedeng sabihin kaagad ng pulis saan sila mag-ooperate. Mga bagay na yan, sekreto po yun. Hanggat mahuli, katulad nung sa mga Marwan, yung mga operations na ganyan. Basit Usman, yung mga ganon. Pero pagdating po sa, kasama rin po dyan, limitasyon, hindi rin po pwede kasi pag mga national security interest din ng mga diplomatic relations, katulad ng mga ibang pag-uusap tungkol sa relasyon ng China at Pilipinas, maaaring may pinag-usapan ng ating Pangulo kasama ng ambassador, hindi naman pwedeng isiwalat lahat. Pangatlo, may mga bank secrecy laws din tayo na gusto natin medyo luwagan ng konti, pero sa ngayon, hindi talaga pwede. At saka yung mga personal na impormasyon na hindi naman kailangan isiwalat. Halimbawa, ako bilang isang kawani ng gobyerno, kailangan ang aking impormasyon ay nasa sa publiko, pero yung impormasyon ng mga anak ko, hindi naman kailangan ilabas din doon para sa kanilang seguridad. So iba po yun po ang mga mangilan-ngilan, pati rin na ng copyright, at saka mga trade secrets. Di naman po pwedeng ilabas din dyan yung recipe ng mga iba na alam naman natin ay kanilang intellectual property. So meron pong mga limitasyon. Pero ayoko lang po kasi dito sa in-announce na FOI sa executive, yung administrative order, hindi po kasama dapat ang SALN sa sinisikreto. Kasi ang SALN ng bawat kawani ng gobyerno, dapat mabilis na nakikita sa ating mga website o kung saan pa man, sapagkat itong nagiging basihan kung tama ba ang lifestyle mo sa kinikita mo. Alam nyo, kami sa Senado, kinikita namin, kung ano man yon, less than 60,000 a month. Okay. So, ano yung lifestyle mo? Okay lang siguro kung ang asawa mo ay may maayos na trabaho sa pribadong sektor. Okay din siguro kung may minana ka na nadeklara mo naman sa estate taxes mo yon, okay lang. Pero para sabihin mo na ang buong pamilya mo ay nakadepende lang sa gobyerno, tapos ikaw ay nakatira sa kung saan-saan at ang mga kotse mo ay ganito-ganyan, wala naman sa income taxes sa SALN mo, yung mga bagay na yan, madali kang mahuhuli for graft. So the president is serious about fighting corruption. The SALN has to be a public document easily accessible by the people.
So that's one of the concerns that you have with the AO. Any other concerns? First of all, the idea that the president issued this order for the executive department.
Well, it sends out a good signal that at least the president at some level is allowing transparency in government. But with the exceptions, I must admit I still have to really scrutinize the more than 160 something exceptions. It's a little bit I guess I'm a little bit dissatisfied still. No, but we can't blame the president. This is not a law yet. This is just an executive order. And what we need to do is to institutionalize it so that long after the president is in power, we still have that law. And if ever we even revise the Constitution, as long as it's already there, even the process of deliberation of the new Constitution will still be FOI compliant.
If Congress passes a law, you can counter some of the exceptions from the executive.
This will take precedence over that, right, sir?
It's a law.
Because that's just an executive order, whereas this is an actual law.
So where is the FOI bill now? In the
Senate?
17th Congress.
In the 17th Congress, we have yet to have our hearings started. Of course, the budget hearings already will begin. And then we are also rushing the emergency powers. But I guarantee our listeners, then since we debated on this quite exhaustively during the last 16th Congress, and my colleagues are quite supportive of it, I think within 3 hearings we'll probably just pass this already. So maybe by early January you have this already on 3rd reading in the Senate.
That is fast. But
Well, we were fast last time, but
that's
unfortunately
true.
Congress wasn't.
Yes.
What's the prognosis sa House noon?
Mahirap po kasi magsalita tungkol sa ganyan dahil unang-una may interparliamentary courtesy pero nalaman naman natin wala pa sila sa 3rd reading noon. Parang 2nd reading, wala pa yata hindi ko alam. Basta, in short, kami, pinasa namin mga 3 months lang ata sa Senado. 8 months from when we started in the 16th Congress, I passed it. That was the 2nd bill passed in Congress. The first was also the SK suspension, barangay SK election suspension by Senator Marcos. This was the 2nd bill that was passed in the Senate. And it was kind of really difficult. I remember I was being so tired because I had to debate Senator Enrile, who at that time was how old, but he could stand for like 2 hours, 3 hours debating me, Senator Miriam Santiago, and these two institutions in the Senate are no longer there. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to have to defend a measure against them, or I mean with them.
Sure.
Imagine that. I don't think everybody will have that opportunity.
Do you think the AO will encourage the congressmen now to do something about it, the FOI?
Well, they want to be able to show support to the president, and the president actually had an open challenge to us. Tapos na ako, ay kayo naman, di ba? So, siguro naman, pero sana yung exemptions na ginawa ng executive order ay hindi naman yun ang gamitin nilang exemptions. Kasi pagdating sa bicameral, pagdating nila sa Senado, hindi ko papayagan yun.
Okay, Senator, it's 8:37. We'll take a 1-minute break and then we'll resume. This is INQ&A with Senator Grace Poe.
This is a story about Filipino courage. People who get bullied but never back down. A nation that shows greater strength when faced with bigger foes. Heroes who suffer setbacks but come back better than ever. A country fighting against all odds and being victorious in the end. This is the story of the Filipino people, best told by the Philippine Daily Inquirer. Get more from the country's #1 newspaper with Inquirer Plus digital newsstand. Download now.
We're back. This is INQ&A with Senator Grace Poe. Senator, I have a question here also from Facebook, from Rex Agliam. Will you support death penalty with what is going on right now and with all these big personalities getting involved in illegal drug operations? And what is your comment well, maybe just, I'll stop there.
Okay. Right now, I really think that we need to be very careful about supporting any measure for the death penalty unless we can expect a higher standard of delivering justice to the public. There are 5 pillars of justice, diba? There's the community, there's law enforcement, there's prosecution, the courts, and corrections. Okay, in all of those, we're really lacking in delivering social justice. Alam niyo ang problema kasi, pag may death penalty, sino ba ang nakakakuha ng magagaling na abogado? Hindi ba yung mga mayayaman rin? So, malamang ang mga kalusot dyan, yung mga drug lords at pushers kasi sila yung mga may abogado na magagaling. Samantalang ang mahihirap, alam naman natin kulang ang PAO, Public Attorney's Office, hindi makakuha ng magandang representasyon. So, para sa akin, ayusin natin ang ating mga korte na mabawasan ang backlog nila, bigyan ng mas mataas sa sweldo ang hudikatura para hindi sila masyadong nababride ng kung sino. Ayusin natin ang corrections facilities natin kasi talagang parang mas masama pa sa death penalty kung nakita mo kung paano sila mabuhay doon. At saka alam mo, dito sa war on drugs na maraming gang-ho kasi dito. Nag-aalala ko na baka ang maging provision yan sa batas ay ganito. Baka a mere possession after a certain amount of drugs will be tantamount to the death penalty. The problem is, paano kung may kaaway ang anak mo? Lasing na lasing ang anak mo, nalagyan ng drugs sa tabi niya, tapos naging non-bailable, tapos death penalty. Ganun na lang ba yun? Kaya, para sa atin, hanggat nakakasigurado talaga tayo na maayos ang ating sistema ng batas, enforcement, at saka ng hudikatura, napakahirap po talaga. Siguro dapat nga linisin muna natin. Pero, tinan mo ngayon, yung extrajudicial killings natin, nakaka-alarma. Pero, bilang isang nanay, pag sinasabi natin na at least nababawasan yung problema ng droga, minsan, tumitingin na lang tayo sa kabila, hindi na natin pinapansin. Hanggang kayong mabiktima. So, kailangan talaga balansehin din.
Senator, just a bit about the Senate dynamics. How are you able to get your chairmanship? Was it something offered to you or something you really asked for?
Well, they ask you for what you prefer. There's no guarantee that you will get that committee. I initially wanted the Committee on Education. Senator Bam wanted it, and I think he's also very capable. I asked for the Senate Committee on Public Services precisely because, if you recall, Senator Surge was the one that was in charge of that in the last Congress when Senator Revilla went on leave. So, Senator Osmeña assigned me to be the subcommittee chairman in charge of ground transport. That's why I'm a little bit familiar with it already, and I wanted to continue what we started.
Isa pang sayang yan, ano? Na nawala sa Senado, si Senator Surge.
Talagang teacher ko yan eh.
Nakagulat din na in the home stretch na doon pa nag-fade, ano?
Alam mo, dapat imbitahin niyo yun. Tanungin mo yung mga
We will.
May mga theory yan about what happened. And I think that Osmeña is quite a household name. Yes, there are a lot of strong candidates, but I also have my doubts about what happened.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. A follow-up question, Senator, from ano ba to? Liu Them Juan Cabasagan. Senator, may tiwala po pa kayo kay General Bato?
Sa nakikita ko sa kanya, meron naman akong tiwala dahil may lakas loob siya. Alam mo, marami na kasi kaming mga nakakausap sa Senado. Sa tingin ko naman, mas tapat siya sa ikumpara mo sa mga iba na nakausap na namin. Alam nyo, marami na akong mga nakausap.
Meron kang favorite dati na PNP chief, ha?
Oo nga eh. Mukha naman teddy bear na mabait. Pero mahirap na communicator. Na hindi, etong si General Bato, na articulate niya o nasasabi niya kung ano talaga yung programa nila. In fact, para nga siyang magaling makakuha ng sentimiento ng publiko. Sa ngayon, pinagkakatiwalaan ko siya, sa tingin ko naman sincero siya sa kanyang sa kanyang mga mandato, pero minsan nakikarried away din. Di ba yung may sinabi nga siya na sunugin ninyo yung ano, pero kaagad-agad naman, ang maganda nun, aminin mo yung pagkakamali mo, humingi ka ng tawad. Ginawa naman niya yun. So, okay naman, bigyan natin ng pagkakataon.
Senator, how is the Senate now? This morning we had an ambush interview with the Senate President Pimentel, and he said he wants to make sure that the Senate is not distracted because of the word war between the President and De Lima. So, what is the effect of that to the other senators like you?
Tama yung sinabi ng Senate President. As Senate President, he really has to ensure that the Senate body continues with its work and not get distracted. Of course, it's also media's responsibility not to hype a particular issue and sacrifice the others that are worthy also of public attention. You know, maybe it's too premature to say, but we have the Ethics Committee. Senator Soto's chairman of that.
They had their organizational meeting today.
Yes, I'm part of that. So if there are any complaints about any one of us, it will go through that. And that's where there should be a formal and proper discussion for whatever issues are hurled against any of the senators.
But do you think it's proper to continue the hearings on the drug-related killings?
Of course, that's part of the mandate of a senator, is to be able to have oversight. And it's really up to the public to judge if that's being used as a forum for personal vendetta or if it's being used just as propaganda for certain groups. But certainly, it's in the international law that we have to be able to investigate in a timely and fair manner all extrajudicial killings. That's part of it.
So,
human rights.
Maybe you can ask a related question from social media from Kevin Hilado. Related to that, do you support the war on drugs, and what is your stand on the extrajudicial killings?
Yes, I do support the war on drugs. In fact, when I was running, one of my platforms was really to declare drugs a national security threat, so that you include not just the PNP but also the military. But again, in accordance with law. I know some people get too excited, but again, how do we know, like, for example, itong drug lord na to pinatay sa isang lugar. Ito ba'y pinatay ng mga vigilante dahil talagang gusto nila mawala yung drug lord na yan? Totoo, mas makakatulog yung mga nanay sa mga lugar na yun dahil wala na si drug lord. Pero pwede rin palitan. Number 2, hindi kaya pinatay si drug lord dahil may mga involved na politiko at pulis na gusto lamang nila tumahimik yan. So para bang nagbubunot ka ng damo at hindi mo nabunot ang ugat. Meron pa rin natitira dyan. Tinapyas mo, natanggal si drug lord, pero naiwan pa rin yung ugat na politiko o pulis na ginagawang posible ang mga bagay na ganyan. Kaya nga para sa akin, kung lahat tayo, galit tayo kay drug lord, mamatay na siya. Pero kailangan pa rin tuntunin ang dahilan kung bakit siya namatay, sinong pumatay sa kanya, kasi nga naman, baka meron pa tayo matuklasan ng mga ibang konektado na mas malala pa ang kasalanan sa bayan kesa dito sa mga ito.
How about charter change, ma'am? What is your stand on the issue?
I've always been open to it. The Constitution is a living document. It should not be stagnant. I said that there are certain things that we can change in the Constitution, like the economic provisions. I'm open to it because the number one requirement for inclusive growth is to have enough opportunities and jobs. But you won't have that if you have, as they say, as President Duterte said, the same oligarchs running the economy. So unless you really open up the economy to foreign ownership, not because I'm not nationalistic, but because I think that we need more investments in the country, I think that our economy will just have a cap. Another thing is I'm not for land ownership of foreigners in the Philippines. I think that we should keep it to ourselves. Kasi
Okay.
sabi ko nga, baka maging Palestine tayo one day. Nabenta na natin ang lahat ng lupain natin.
You want to keep it as is,
Right
the
now, no
provision.
foreign ownership on land.
Oh.
Unless this is for manufacturing or certain industries that will actually create jobs. But even then, I'm not even too sure if I will vote for it.
Senator, before I ask my next question, I'd like to say hi to viewers watching us on Facebook Live from Hong Kong, Singapore, and the United States. Hi, guys.
Magandang gabi po. Magandang gabi. Umaga man sa inyong lahat.
Senator, if I can go back to the question of Senate dynamics, nagpaalam ba si Senator Chi sa inyo bago siya, before he decided to join the Senate minority? Did you have a discussion?
Hindi naman siya
Before-
kailangang magpaalam sa akin. Hindi ko naman siya hawak sa leeg. At hindi rin niya ako hawak.
As a
Pero
friend.
as a friend, nabanggit niya sa akin yan. Senator Cheese wanted a particular committee, but I think that he thought that he might be more relevant and effective being in the minority. I know that Senator Cheese was supportive of the Senate presidency of Senator Soto, if ever.
That's right.
But I think he's perfect for the minority because he's been in the minority in Congress also before.
That's
Tatlo
right.
lang nga sila, di ba?
That's right. Si Ralph,
Ronalson and
yeah.
No, I'm sorry, not Ronalson.
Sunny Trillanes.
Sunny Trillanes and Senator Recto's minority chairman.
Sorry to jump again. For charter change, con-as or con-con?
Because of because of the time that they're looking at and also the expense, I think CONAS will work as long as there's actually a transparency in the deliberation and also a parallel body of a constitutional commission made up of respected individuals that will serve as the technical advisor for the CONAS. You know, whatever we decide in Congress anyway will have to go through a plebiscite. So it's not like we have a unilateral decision on that and powers to be able to amend the Constitution. Ayun lang nga, nandyan na. Kaya mabuti siguro, meron pa rin mga statesmen na mag-a-advise sa amin, their constitutional convention, na, and we have to be able to come up with a law that will set the criteria for those that will compose the constitutional convention group.
Okay.
Senator, we have 9 minutes to go. We would like to
Ang
ask
bilis,
you.
time flies.
Yes.
Time flies. Si Christine has some fast questions to ask
Yes. So we have a new segment for INQ&A. It's called the good, the bad, and the maybe. So you could answer good idea or bad idea. You could also answer maybe, but only once. But if you have spare time, you could explain some of the answers that you feel that you need to explain.
Okay.
So we can start. I have 10 topics, and you can just say if
A
it's
good
a good
idea or
idea or a
bad
bad idea.
Okay.
So number 1 is nuclear energy for electricity.
Bad idea.
Duterte's mula sa masa para sa masa bi-monthly tabloid.
For me, it depends, ha?
Okay.
Politically, it's a good idea for him. But I always believe in journalistic freedom. So if there's a monopoly on that, I think that it's a bad idea on that aspect. So
Okay.
again, good idea politically for him, but bad idea I think for the
For the
public.
industry.
Replacing LRT2 with a bus rapid transit system.
This I'll have to go with maybe until we see actually the time in motion and the dynamics involved.
Prison island for drug offenders.
Good idea.
The Lima resignation.
Bad idea now without due process.
Uber, Grab, and related services.
Okay, maybe the transport sector would be happy, but I think it's a good idea for some. And for me, it's quite convenient even for us.
Yes. Lisa Dino heading the Film Development Council.
Good idea.
Bounty for cops in drug trade.
Good idea.
Joma season going home to the Philippines.
Good idea.
Rewriting textbooks to feature martial law prominently.
Good idea.
Okay, I guess we're done in 3 minutes.
Any answer that you'd like to
To clarify,
Yeah.
you know, like some people are a bit weary about having Joma season come back here. But I think that we really have to strengthen our democratic processes, and to be able to see that also is that we welcome all sorts as long as they don't have any terroristic tendencies and they only engage us at an intellectual level of discussion. Why not? Basta naman, di ba? The Constitution is pretty clear. You're not an insurgent. You're not doing anything to harm your countrymen. So, again, why not?
Senator, can you say hi to our viewers from the UAE, Japan, and Bali, Indonesia?
Hello, magandang gabi, umaga sa inyong lahat po at maraming salamat po na pinaglaanan niyo ng oras ang pakikinig ngayon. Magaling talaga ang Inquirer dahil alam nila lahat talaga ng mga issues. Sila yung una sa ating balita at salamat din sa inyong ambag sa ating bansa kahit na malayo kayo. Kayo naman talaga nagpalutang ng ating ekonomiya ng ilang taon.
Thank you.
Senator,
I have a question about the president. Have you talked to him since since he took his oath?
No, I only talked to him when I conceded. That was the only first and last time since then that we spoke. But we don't really need to speak about anything unless he needs me for anything. I'm always open to help the administration. Their success will spell out success for the public. Therefore, I would like to be supportive.
Not to put you on the spot, but we had Senator Dick Gordon here 2 weeks ago, and we showed him a picture of the time 7 senators, including Senator Gordon, visited with the president in Malacanang. Sina
Cayetano,
Senator Miggs,
Zubiri.
Senator Alan. I think this was the group that Alan wanted to put together as a coalition. Did you see that photo? Did you hear about that meeting?
I've seen the photo. Yes, I didn't hear about the meeting until after. Apparently, they had a tax briefing or the finance
that's true.
briefing. But, you know, Secretary Dominguez was kind enough to give me a one-on-one briefing
I see.
together with his team. So, it was less political and more work focused. And I appreciated that. There was really no need for me actually to have that briefing anymore. But I would always welcome the opportunity to be able to speak to the President should he need me.
Senator, ang daming laman ng balita, no? And a lot of it is bleak, no? What are we missing? I mean, you're heavily involved. There's so many things happening in the Senate and so on. Is there something big that mainstream media is failing to cover or cover properly? Is there anything we should be giving more attention to?
Yeah, that's really a good question. I think that with the popularity of the President now, there's really a lot of things that media can do just to be able to balance the situation and present to the public what's going on. Like for example, I think you should go down really to the barangay level and check on the ones that are being sent notices to go to the barangay to present themselves because of their supposed relations to connections to drugs. I think that we need to be careful because remember there's also this issue on this honor student from Pangasinan who was called to the barangay. She was cleared of being involved in drugs but then later on found killed. I think we should really look into that. We should also we should also make sure that we have that really educate the people on federalism because it seems again with a very popular champion on federalism we tend to realize that it can also add an additional burden to our bureaucracy and also strengthen certain dynastic tendencies in different regions. We need to show that things like that.
What is your own view on federalism?
I really think you should give the different regions more autonomy and more financial capability, give them a bigger share of the era. But for there to be an actual federal state, I'm quite unclear about this. First of all, we haven't really upheld what it says in the Constitution that there should be no dynasties. The first the first compliance that we'll ever have in this anti-dynasty provision in the Constitution is the SK Reform Bill. Di ba? Kasi bawal na may kamag-anak ka until I don't know what degree of consanguinity.
Mukhang hindi yata napag-aralan ng administration eh.
Ayun
The way they talk about the SK bill.
Ayun na nga
The
po
SK law.
So, we really need to be able to make sure that the anti-dynasty law is upheld. Number 2, ayun na nga, a true FOI without all those exceptions. Kasi, ang hirap, ang natatakot ako ay maging, alam mo, we're an archipelago na nga di ba? We're all separated by different dialects, by water. And then you have like different, feudal groups. And as it is now, when we campaign, pag pupunta kami sa lugar, ay hawak ni family so-and-so yan. Eh di lalo na pag nag-federal ka. Di ba? Pag sinasabi nila, I know that there are some who believe na at least, even if you're a little known family name in a province, you can have a national position in a federal setup. Not true, because look at it now. A lot of the poor from the provinces can't even run for mayor because it's the same families who are dominating the political scene in the province. So really, that's really a problem about dynastic tendencies in the country.
Related to that, here's actually an excellent question, also from Russ Reslo. Paano makakapagpahina sa drug at wetting networks ang isang mahigpit na anti-dynasty law?
Kasi, malinaw naman po na ang nagpapatakbo ng isang probinsya, kung isang pamilya lang, edi hawak nila lahat. Ang pera, kapangyarihan, pati na rin yung pulis. Kaya kung at least may balanse, hindi lang isang pamilya ang namamahala ng isang munisipalidad, edi syempre may nagbabantay doon. Alam nyo, ayoko naman pagbintangan na lahat ng mga pamilya involved dito, hindi naman. Pero halimbawa na lang, ang ating mga pulis sa bawat presinto, ang maintenance and other operating expenses budget po nila ay 1,000 bawat isang buwan, bawat pulis. Kasama na po doon kuryente, tubig, panglinis ng presinto, kaya ang dumi-dumi. Kung 5 lang ang pulis sa isang town, edi 5,000 lang yung makukuha nila. Sino ngayon ang sumusuporta sa kanila? Minsan, wala silang panggasolina ng mga mobile patrol units sila dahil ubos na ang kanilang nakalaan na gasolina. Edi yan nagbibigay si local padrino, kung drug lord man siya or wetting man siya yung nagbibigay sa police ng allowance kasi wala man lang silang papatakbo ng presinto nila. So really, we really have to look at all of these allocations, also government support to our local enforcers so that they won't be dominated by the powers that be or the dominant families in their respective provinces.
Senator, last question for me before we end. I'm just curious about your promotion of film tourism.
Yes.
How is the bill now, and what is your vision for that?
We have to refile it because we
No,
had it
you
in
haven't
I think
refiled
did
it
we
yet.
refile it already, attorney? The film tourism, we've refiled it, so it needs to go through another committee hearing. Sa ating mga kababayan, alam niyo po, pagka prinomote natin ang ating bansa bilang tourist destination para sa mga pelikula, akalain ninyo yung Born
Legacy.
Born Legacy na yon. Ang laki-laki ng hype doon, pinakita naman Pilipinas, hindi naman yung magagandang parte, di ba? Tapos sa kalagitnaan pa ng karagatan, hindi nakita yung shoreline ng Palawan. You know, the exposure that you can get by having all these films abroad is tremendous. Kung ipakita, halimbawa, The Beach, ang daming pumunta ng Thailand. Lord of the Rings, lahat pumunta sa New Zealand. Ilang bilyon ang nabigyan ng trabaho na kinalap ng gobyerno dahil sa turismo. Ang Pilipinas po, kumikita tayo ng 6 billion a year sa tourists. Samantalang ang Thailand po nasa 42 billion. Ang kinikita po natin sa ating mga OFW, 26 billion. So kung tumaas lang ang ating turismo to even match that of Thailand, I don't think we need to send much OFWs abroad anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think the Philippines is less beautiful than Thailand. I think we're kind of more interesting also because we're very hospitable and we speak
So the film tourism bill gives incentives to the government to market the Philippines?
To market the Philippines, give them tax incentives when they shoot here. Film London has something like that. Ang mangyayari kasi, kunyari sabihin natin, sige you won't have to pay
okay, for the next
certain
Game of
taxes.
Thrones season. Dapat meron silang tropical ano.
na setting, di ba? Or kahit na yung mga
Yeah.
sound studios natin dito, kung
That's
mas mura.
right. That's
But,
right.
but you know, we'll say that if you feature the beauty of the Philippines,
Mhm.
at least 5 minutes in your movie or 2 minutes, basta the beauty, not the
Mhm.
squalor lang.
Mhm.
And sometimes that will, you know,
Mhm.
then we will give you these incentives. But aside from that also, it's promoting our local content abroad. You know, when there are trade shows abroad,
Mhm.
usually Korea will have its own booth,
Mhm.
China and other countries. The Philippines, we have ABS, GMA, kalat-kalat. So if you're an independent film producer with really good movies and content, you can't afford to have a booth. Because
Yeah.
so how do you promote, you know, our local content? That's why the Philippines will also have to give money to these directors to
Yeah.
attend
Mhm.
all of these workshops to be able to learn more.
Okay. Senator, last question from me. What other what more can we expect from you in the next 3 years? I mean, what legislative priorities do you have in mind?
Well, my dream's always to be able to enact the law that will institutionalize a lunch program in all public elementary schools.
Mhm.
Libreng pananghalian para sa mga bata.
Mhm.
It's very important kasi alam mo, the Philippines is one of the youngest populations in the world,
Mhm.
and this is our advantage. But what type of population will we have if these kids are malnourished? They won't be able to learn as much in school.
Mhm.
So for us to be competitive globally, we have to be able to empower our youth,
Mhm.
and that begins with the proper nutrition.
Okay.
Ano ba naman yung 40 billion pesos a year? I know it's a lot.
Mhm.
Okay, it's a lot of money.
Mhm.
But if you're really feeding the kids properly, you know, some people are still saying na, alam mo, nung bata kami, may gatas sa school, meron
That's
root
true.
ribbon,
Mhm.
di ba? Lumaki naman silang matino. Ang sinasabi ko, bakit kung kailan yumaman pa yung bansa natin, wala tayong mga programang ganito.
Mhm.
So, yun ang isa. Well, of course, the FOI, you want that to pass. Another thing is the first 1,000 days of a child's life na dapat sa sinapupunan pa lang ang mga nanay nabibigyan na ng sapat na suporta at pagkain para kasi nga yung brain nga pagdating ng 2 years old hindi na po yan lumalaki talaga.
Mhm.
So kailangan matalino talaga ang mga Pilipino para makapagkompetensya tayo sa ibang bansa. Yun po yung mga iba sa prioridad natin.
Okay, and on that note, I think we can. This has been a very instructive discussion. Thank you very much, Senator Grace Poe, for making time for us. Tayo, magpapaalam na tayo.
Naubo ka na?
Thank you to everyone watching us on Facebook and YouTube. To learn who our next guest would be, follow us on social media on Twitter.
Yeah.
All right, and this has been INQ&A. Thank you and good night.
Ito ang Radyo Inquirer Nueva Novela. Ito na ang mga winning lotto numbers hatid ng PCSO at PTV4.
Our Lotto 642 jack prize for tonight is 7,656,700 pesos. Okay, Miss Aragdon, please press that button. Let's now play Lotto 642. Maraming salamat po muli sa ating chairperson and to the rest of our panel of judges sa paglaan po ng oras para samahan kaming maghatid ng swerte. 42 balls naman po ang laman ng ating and we will be waiting for 6 lucky draw balls. Okay, we have the first number. And it's the number 19. Ang Lotto 642 ay isang pyramidal game din po. Kung isa lang ang jackpot winner, solo niya ang jackpot prize. Paghatian naman po ang jackpot prize kung dalawa higit pa ang ating jackpot winner. And for the second number, we have the number 8. Pyramidal din po ang mga consolation prizes sa Lotto 642 game.